Hello, welcome, and Happy New Year to everybody here. We're trying something new for 2024, and we call it Airheads Radio.
Or maybe even on Airheads. I don't know what works better, but you tell us, right? You're our audience.
That's right. So, my name is Miles. I'm part of the product team here at HP Aruba Networks.
And my name is James, and I'm part of the CTO team here at Aruba Networks.
So, the idea that we've got here is to reach out to all of our airheads out there, you guys, and ultimately inform you of what we're up to around here.
Well, not literally miles. I mean, my office is kind of small, so I know I can't, have all of these people kind of join me in my office and see what I'm really up to. But I think more than anything, it's going to be an opening up what we're really doing across the entire HP Aruba Networks family, and truly getting to see what goes on behind the scenes. How are we building things? How are we making things? What would you like to discuss? I think it's going to be really kind of interesting to kind of bring this content to everybody.
That's right. And I think generally what we're hoping to is really connect with, our technical audience, bring you some stuff that you may not see, on the standard website, give you some behind the scenes, kind of thought processes about how the Aruba part of the HPE business come at different problems. And generally just, have an interaction in which we can have a bi-directional conversation with you guys.
Yeah, and I'm amazed that they've chosen us to do this. Right, this is going to be a lot of fun working with you, Miles, on these things over the out months. So I'm really excited about being here and kind of diving into some of the stuff that we've got planned.
Yep.
And of
Super.
course, more than anything, everyone, we want to make this interactive, right? So while this today is kind of our first attempt, maybe it's our pilot episode. Over the out months, we want you to give us ideas of what you want to see, right? What's going to make this interesting to you? What do you want us to unpack and kind of bring to light in any of the upcoming episodes?
That's right. Yeah, and for our marketing team, that's listening in here, maybe if we get some super interactive audience members, we can figure out some swag or different prizes that we can hand out for that type of stuff. So New Year's, right, always comes with some new actions and resolutions. So James, what are you up to recently here in 2024?
Oh, goodness, Miles, it's been a busy start of the year. I think definitely underpinned by a little bit of a splash that HPE made in the public news last week. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. But it's also been busy. I've been starting to work again with different customers, different partners, trying to understand what their objectives are for 2024 and how they align. And also, I spent a little time just a few weeks ago working with David Hughes on what we were seeing kind of coming down the pipe in terms of predictions. We kind of pulled out the crystal ball, and David and I had a good conversation about things that we saw that were going to impact the security and networking industry through the course of 2024. So if you haven't seen that webcast, I recommend that you tune into that and take a good look.
Yeah, definitely a good piece of content and gives some, kind of insight into the way that David's thinking about stuff. So I encourage everybody to go check that out. So for today's episode, we've got, a few things lined up for you. Let's transition into kind of a new segment that we're hoping to do here.
Okay, it kind of feels like maybe we need a newsy jingle to lead into that.
Yeah, I'm at risk of making myself a meme here, but like maybe I'll try one like do 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 news segment
This
Aruba
is
Airheads.
the news.
I guarantee. Oh, microphone. I guarantee that'll be turned into a meme at some point for sure. There's no doubt. But nevertheless, let's kick into the news. So one of the late breaking kind of things that came across my desks and announcements was that Samsung just launched their brand new kind of refresh of the Galaxy line. And the interesting part for us around that is that the full family of S24s, not just like the very top end, but the Ultra, the Plus, and the kind of like standard S24 are going to be coming with Wi-Fi chipsets across the board. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but I know there's a bunch of laptops obviously now supporting the Intel B200 card. So a lot of that was released also at CES this time. So I think we're really starting to see Wi-Fi 7 potentially start to show what it's going to do. And that's really exciting. That's kind of really neat stuff that we're going to see through the balance of 2024. And that's also one of the things that we talked about in that webinar with David Hughes. So again, tune in for that.
Yeah, exciting for sure. No, now on to the other news that you probably already know about. What is news when it's not actually new to anybody? But ultimately, huge investment from HPE on the intent to acquire Juniper Networks. James, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's going to definitely redefine, I would say, the networking and security industry for this next decade plus, right? It's going to change the landscape. It's going to be really interesting. I'm very excited personally about what I can see eventually coming down the pipe because of this acquisition. But, of course, I just want to talk to our audience here for a second and just let them know, this is an acquisition of a large public entity in Juniper Networks, right? And that takes time, right? That takes regulatory things to get aligned all the way across the globe before we can actually close the deal as such, and then start to think about product direction and what new initiatives we can bring to the market. So, basically, for everyone that's listening today, the balance of 2024 completely business as usual, right? And we're not expecting this deal potentially to close before the end of 2024 or potentially early in 2025. Until that happens, we can't even begin to talk across the fence to our colleagues in Juniper's CTO team or product teams and start to even think about what that future looks like.
Yeah, I think the legal team would be happy if they ever listen to this podcast with your caveat there, James. But ultimately, your point is right. For us in the product management organization, it's business as usual. We're still out there competing, running hard, making innovations in the product, building new capabilities, and making sure that whether it's our cloud product, whether it's our infrastructure, whatever else, man, we just have the pedal to the floor, making sure that you guys are getting some cool stuff out there in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, I think one of the big talking points that we've seen already in the press, and is this idea that this next era of networking will be fronted by AI-enabled networking and security, right? And so we're going to usher in this kind of new decade of AI advancements within the portfolio. That's going to be really fun and exciting to work on. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. 2023 and going into even early 2024 here, uh, AI has really been stamped kind of everywhere. It's been interesting to see announcements of AI smokers and AI assisted bicycles and like all this other stuff.
How does
When
that work?
I don't even. Well, I don't know. I watched a like little short description of it, but it was like we're able to determine based on the shape of the meat using AI to determine what type of meat it is, the best smoking profile. Like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that
I think
there
there's
was.
some things that AI probably shouldn't actually get involved in, right? Let's
Yeah,
keep the human in the equation, like
that's
what
right.
kind of meat and how well I'm going to cook it. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean, like I'm kind of in the same boat, but for as much as AI gets stamped on everything, I am really, personally energized in, the industry around, what modern data science, as I like to call it, is doing for the networking space. There's a lot of exciting things that are going on, especially around, our next generation of Central here, that I think not only are going to be things that again energize, re-energize the network engineer, but also really add some value to organizations in terms of moving quicker and being able to do some interesting stuff.
yep, totally agree. I really love AI. I like the whole idea of what it can bring to us, and yeah, it's become a bit of a buzzword as we kind of worked our way through 2023. But that buzzword is really becoming reality, right? And it truly has the potential to help organizations optimize, especially in our space, optimize their infrastructure and make sure that infrastructure is running at the most productive level it can be, right? So to support anything that they have to do on their infrastructure and all the needs that it has.
So that sounds a little bit like, you put on your marketing hat for a second and took off the CTO hat. So explain yourself in a little more detail here before people cancel us.
Oh my gosh, we're not going to get cancelled on our first episode. We can't do that. No, no. Look. I think it's a really interesting idea, right? Of being able to um, take a lot of information that humans just struggle with trying to process, and then applying, different models against it, um, so that they can unpack it more quickly and bring it, to reality, right? To actually make sense of it. And obviously that really is going to impact, how we operate infrastructure going forward, and all of that value of almost like a AI enabled operations team, right? Being able to look for things that are going on the infrastructure, and solving them potentially before they become a problem. It's only gonna, to me, make things better. And yeah, we get a lot of that kind of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? The FUD, um, that, oh my gosh, AI is going to take my job. No, I think if we really unpack it, AI is going to help us do our jobs more efficiently and more effectively, and it's going to give us a better quality of work than we've been able to do when it's just us as humans trying to handle these things. So that to me has got to be a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I think one of the like really interesting parts about what is exciting going on, within our part of the business is that, based on the kind of time that we've been in the market with a cloud platform, based on the number of customers, everything else, the amount of data that our data scientists have to work with, and the quality of that data based on being in real environments, not being experimental, test labs or whatever else. I think there's a lot of opportunity for some huge things. I know there is because I've seen it, and I think
Mm-hmm.
there's also additional, kind of room to grow on our side in terms of what we can do. So,
Right.
uh, speaking about stats and data and telemetry, let's pivot to our next topic, talking about some of the interesting, big things that are going on in the Airhead community. One of the things that I saw recently was that the top search for the last year in Airheads was Aruba Central. So that's an
Hmm.
interesting one to me. What do you think? What do you think is driving that particular search?
Well, I mean, if it was me, I would say we've got a lot of customers out there who are trying to make a decision about where they go in the future, right? They're on AOS 8, they're potentially, or AOS 6 even, they're potentially, still on-prem, and they're thinking, okay, how do I take advantage of some of these new advantages that we have built into Aruba Central already, and also what's going to be coming in Central next generation, right? So I think we've just started to hit that critical mass, right, where Aruba Central is really now starting to resonate with a lot of customers out there who have deployed the technology. So to me, it makes a lot of sense. People want to get educated about Aruba Central, what it can do, where it's going, how we're going to get it to do all this loveliness, and obviously how we're going to, empower it with other features and functions going down the road, especially as we get to Central Next Gen.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so another kind of interesting going on here is the top threads that we've had, over the last few months here. Some interesting ones that we wanted to highlight, just in terms of the top three, was a thread, and these will all be linked down in the show notes. So check those out if you want more detail. But we're really proud of the community that we've built around Airhead. So we like to highlight, these kind of things, and have a brief discussion about them. So we've got one thread in which somebody's trying to buy an IAP 225 on eBay, and just kind of like back and forth about ultimately, could I upgrade this code to AOS 8? What does that kind of look like? So the interesting result of that, James, was,
Mm-hmm.
basically that like, hey, watch out, a lot of these eBay sellers are doing kind of funky things where they took, a campus AP, converted it to IAP. You may not have the right kind of memory profile on those boxes to actually,
Mm-hmm.
do this upgrade that you want to do. So definitely a thing to watch out for, right? I highly
Right.
recommend that, if you're putting this not into a home lab, but rather into your, like, company's infrastructure, that you really consider whether you want to buy it off of eBay. That's one thing that maybe I have to say as the vendor, but also,
Well,
like,
and then
just
I mean, Yeah, personally, I mean, I'd have to question. I mean, I know there's some 225 deployments still out there, but maybe the better point is to think about what that future path is to a product that's going to give you the capabilities that really can drive some modern edge infrastructure.
Yeah, for sure. And look, for the folks that are like trying to do home lab out there, the one thing that I'll say is like as we make the transition to AOS 10, like 225s are very relatively old APs. And I think in general around here we do a pretty good job of supporting things for a long time. But that being said, one of the problems that we came into in trying to support as much as we possibly could going backwards in terms of the portfolio as we moved to AOS 10 was just the memory footprint. So like 225
Mhm.
as an example is one of those ones that we're leaving behind. Now the 300 series, barring a few caveats that you can check out in data sheets, we are carrying forward into AOS 10. So if you're going to eBay for some home lab action and that type of thing, I highly suggest you just really consider the platform that you're going after. Anyway,
Right.
continuing on, one of the other ones that we had here was just simply controller upgrades from 6 to 8 for the sake of mesh. And while there's probably not a lot for James and I to discuss on this one, just a really good conversation about what are the options, for this customer. So, just want to give a shout out to everybody in that thread. Extremely supportive in trying to help this customer. Same thing on the ClearPass upgrades from 6.11 to 6.5. Really good conversation around the LSR, SSR kind of strategy that we've done across the portfolio. And generally kind of a thought process about when somebody should upgrade and that type of thing, and a
Yeah.
couple product managers chiming in, so you're getting kind of direct from the product team's mouth, some of this information. So James,
Yeah.
on that one, any thought process about SSR? Well, maybe we should describe these things, right? These are
Yeah.
short
Yeah.
and long support releases, basically. Any thoughts about how an organization might use an SSR versus an LSR, and when to use one versus another?
Well, I mean, I think the ambition for any organization, especially the ones that I work with on their strategy, is always to think about how do I get to a long-term supported version, right? Because that obviously gets you to a place where we've created a level of stability in the product already, right? That code has been validated; it's reasonably rock solid. And that also means, again, you're not constantly going to be in the process of upgrading to the next release, right? So yeah, the long-term supported versions always are the best strategy to go for. That's always what I will kind of recommend, unless you just are desperate for a particular feature, right? And it's only in a short-term release. Then obviously you haven't got much choice other than to go that route until we get to a point where that's included in the long term.
Yeah, and I think SSRs are also, just valuable for those kind of pilot sites and other kind of things where you're trying stuff
Mm-hmm.
out or you're experimenting or whatever else. But to your point, like for regular operations, trying to get yourself to an LSR is best bet. Sometimes you're just not able to get there. It's the reality of
Right.
how we have to release features and things like that, and even hardware. Right? We sometimes put a
Yep.
new piece of hardware on an SSR, but ultimately, something in which, as you're thinking about your strategy, you should definitely think down the path of trying to push yourself towards LSRs. For folks that don't visit our forums often, right, and don't come visit us, one of the things that we wanted to highlight in this session was this new kind of idea and approach that we're taking around a members only section of Airheads, meaning that previously everything you could just be a lurker and be able to check out all the content that we have. Now we've got kind of a portion of Airheads in which necessitates a login to get behind. And the reason for that is because we're able to do some pretty deep dive topics that we weren't able to do previously.
Yeah, and I think we've already got some interesting kind of content and stuff already out there, and there's plenty more in the pipeline to come, right, Miles?
Yep, for sure. So we've got ultimately a segment already up there called "Waiting for Wi-Fi 7," and we've got a bunch of other kind of stuff queued up in that realm for people to be able to get their hands on.
Yeah, that's a hot topic, right? Obviously, it's one of David Hughes's predictions for the year for 2024. We're going to see Wi-Fi 7 really start to grow some legs, like we were talking about earlier. But I think it's more important to really focus on what's driving that capability, and that really is this idea that we now have access to this 6 gigahertz band that we've taken advantage of with Wi-Fi 6E, and obviously will now flow into Wi-Fi 7. So that's really where the advantage truly comes. Is we've got this lovely 6 gigahertz space that we can take advantage of.
For sure. Well, so with that, I have a little game for you to play. After jumping
Okay.
you hoops, I was actually able to get access to our data lake, which is essentially the way in which we start up our work around understanding the data science that we should be placing into the product, and just generally understanding, our product and how things are going, for lack of a better way to describe it. So here's something that I found in the data lake that I want to quiz you
Okay.
on. So,
Yep.
with the introduction of 6 gigs, it was we have information about basically the trend of devices that are capable of 6 gigahertz coming onto our networks, right? And starting to see those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even in environments in which the customer hadn't yet bought 6 gig, we know the type of client it is, and therefore we know whether it can support
The
6 gig.
capability of that client, right? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So the question that I've got for you is, kind of over the years, how do you think the device type has trended? Like in 2021, just as we are starting to get into this stuff extremely early, right?
Yeah.
What do you think was the most common kind of capable device that we saw on our networks?
Well, if I'm kind of thinking back 2021, right? I would say some of the high-end smartphones were probably some of the first things that were out there. I think, if I recall, the Samsung made a big splash, getting into that space early on in 21, even though there was really no one who could use it. So it was kind of like, yeah, this is a future-proof feature. And then I've got to guess that a lot of it was more experimental, right? It was probably people plugging in, either USB dongles or upgrading laptops in a lab with a new chipset to try and take advantage of it. Because I'm trying to recall what we were doing back then, and that kind of marries up to what I remember.
Yeah, that's for sure what we were doing in our labs. Is like we had some Galaxies that we bought, and we had some chipsets that we were buying off of eBay that we didn't even replace the laptops. We just bought the chipsets, and then we like slammed them into an existing laptop that we had. So definitely, what was happening in 2021. So 2022, what do you think changed in 2022? Primarily, smartphone,
Hmm.
Samsung, and then some chipset. What do you think changed in 2022?
Oh gosh, 2022. Well, I mean, I think you start to get a lot more mainstream adoption, right, in 22 and probably beyond into 23, where all of the major manufacturers on their high-end devices were bringing them to life with early 6E capability, right? So I would say, yeah, the big players, right? The Samsungs and your Apple devices, and then obviously the slew of laptops from most manufacturers, and your Mac laptops and your other vendors' laptops, all coming to life with 6E radios. Even though, again, it probably wasn't used that much yet.
You're close. One of the interesting
Oh.
things that I noticed out of the data there was, like, Apple was a little bit later to the game on their adoption on the 6 gig side, right? And that
Hmm.
really seemed to influence the mobile part of it. But man, laptops went like gangbusters in 2022 in
Mm.
terms of the supported devices. Like, I think, just a bunch of vendors started slamming those new chipsets in there. It made sense. Why not? High end laptops, it's not
Right.
that much more expensive to put an additional antenna in, and so on and so forth. So that was definitely very interesting, in terms of seeing that trend. So with that, what do you think happened in 2023? Because I think your 2022 prediction actually is a little bit more lined up
Mm.
with 2023.
Yeah, probably right. So I'll just echo what I said for 23, right? I think, you did have the major manufacturers really go into it. And we also started to see critical mass of, network equipment that actually had 6E in it. So the endpoints could actually talk to the network now. So, that's probably one of the biggest thing. And then, the other thing I think that we started to see through that, and hopefully our audience has already realized this, is that if you're going into a 6E network or eventually into Wi-Fi 7, you have to use WPA3, right? So, that obviously has to now start to end up in these networking stacks as well on these devices so they can actually, kind of make it into mainstream, because otherwise they can't even authenticate to the infrastructure, right? They can't talk.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is the interesting challenge about 6 gig is it definitely, um, in our industry, we kind of purposefully left some of the protocols behind and only did, forward support on 6 gig, which helps
Right.
in some different ways because we don't have to deal with the backwards compatibility. It also hurts in other ways in that customers have to start to figure out how they adopt WPA3 and some of these other, kind of technologies that we've moved along since. So, exciting stuff on the 6 gig side. It's getting to a point in which 2023 was a lot of year in which I felt like it was future proofing in most organizations to be
Yep.
buying 6 gig
Yep.
radios. And I think
Yep.
2024 is definitely going to be starting to see 6 gig spectrum light up, because we've got a bunch of devices that now support 6 gig spectrum, as well as the reality that Wi-Fi 7 is only going to, continue to introduce more and more devices onto the market that are leveraging that spectrum. Exciting stuff. And, other countries starting to get on board and everything else. It's going to be interesting
Right.
without a doubt.
Right. Right. Yeah. And
All
I
right.
think the WPA3 thing is really important, right? We need to make sure that our audience understands that if they're not playing with WPA3 already in their environments, they need to be,
For
partly because
sure.
it's going to enhance the security of the devices, but then ultimately you're going to see, devices that have to talk on WPA3 if they're on the 6 gig band eventually. I know I run WPA3 at the house. I only found one problem on my home network. It was a garage door opener. I have an automated garage door opener that would not talk WPA3. Quick call to the company and a firmware update later, helping them out, and now it works.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those IoT devices are always challenging for sure. All right. So, just for the sake of time, let's keep kind of booking through our topics here. I think one of the
Yep.
things that we wanted to highlight is just talk a little bit more about the different corners that we have. We highlighted the fact that we've got Wi-Fi 7 content up there. If you're not checking out what's in the corners, there's also content around network security, switching DCN, cloud, central, wireless 5G. Our SD branch team just uploaded a bunch of content around integration with public clouds. So there's stuff happening there all the time, and we highly encourage you to go check that stuff out. So, on the calendar, we've got a bunch of kind of events coming up for 2024 that we'd really love to see you at. So, obviously, the big one that we've got is our annual Atmosphere Conference. This year, we're joining up with a superpower of HPE Discover, and it's going to kind of be a dual event for our Airheads, right? The ability to go to an Atmosphere event, check out all the networking stuff, and then right beside it in the hall, all the stuff that will be showing off: storage, compute, cloud, GreenLake, everything that goes on the wider organization kind of side. You'll be able to visit both of those events in one location. Really exciting stuff. So, James,
Mm.
you've been up on stage for the last few years. Any kind of hints that you can give us of what we're going to see, or anything that you can expose here?
Well, Mars, it's on a need to know basis right now, and
No.
unfortunately, I don't think you need to know. But
Mm,
what I will say, it's going to be a blockbuster, right? We're going to have a lot of really exciting things going on at the event. Obviously, partnering with our parent HPE, we're really going to be able to show truly that edge to cloud to exascale journey that HPE is talking about in the press, and obviously underpins a number of these large acquisitions that the company has done over the last 12 or so months. So I think it's going to be just a really exciting time. Definitely mark your calendars to come to Vegas in June and see us. And registration, I think, opens pretty soon. So, definitely reach out to your Aruba teams or your partners. Make sure you're there. I used to have a PE um, uh, uh, PE teacher who always used to say, be there or be square. That was his thing, right? And this is absolutely one of those events that you do not want to miss in the calendar this year. It's going to be really good.
Well, PE was never my thing, so I tried to miss PE as much as possible. But ultimately, this is one that you're not going to want to miss. And as we think about smaller events around the globe in 2024, you'll definitely want to visit us for some of those things. Whether you can visit us in Atmosphere or not. Well, the last thing I want to highlight is we talked a little bit about AI and all the exciting stuff that we've got coming up on that front. One of the things that I'll remind you of is that we do have a webinar coming up here very shortly for our AI content that'll go into way more depth than what we were able to here. And then in the February timeframe, we've got personal area networking kind of deep dive that we'll be doing as part of a webinar as well. So I really encourage you to check those out. Again, those will be in the show notes. We also would love to hear from you on what's working with this show, what's not working with this show, whether you love my orange jacket, whether you hate it, whatever else you want to know about Aruba. We'd love for you to interact in the comments. So leave your comments. We'll be there replying to them, and definitely join us for next month's session. James, any sign out thoughts?
Nope. I just would say thank you for listening and tuning in to hearing us drone on for 30 minutes. I hope you got something out of it. And like Miles says, we've got lots of interesting things planned. So come back and see us again. So it's a goodbye from me.
Thanks all.